Hello, it's Professor Parish, and one more week closer to finals. It's Sunday night, so please remember to get your assignments turned in on time. This week has several important assignments that are due, such as, let me go to course content, obviously paper number 3, which I will hopefully get back to you all very soon this week. So paper number 3 is due. Your drama exam is due tonight, and the discussion forum is due tonight. So 3 big assignments. Make sure that you get them done and submitted to me by 11:55 p.m. Double check your labels. Make sure everything's turned in correctly. So looking ahead to next week, week 13, we are starting our research paper. It is all led to this, our final paper of the class. We don't spend as much time on drama because I want to give you guys some extra time to work on this paper. You basically have close to a month to work on it, which is quite a bit of time. So what is due this week before we get into paper 4 guidelines? Obviously your discussion forum is due, post due by Friday, April 12th, responses due by Sunday, April 14th. As far as this MLA scavenger hunt is concerned, I'll go ahead and click on it. If you've not looked at the MLA citation presentation that is in our resources, and if you've not watched my week 5 video on MLA, please do so. The insert in your Cengage handbook is extremely helpful, but I would like it if you paired that handbook insert with my video and the presentation to double check yourself, because there have been a few grammatical assignments where people have been like, which one should I look at? You should look at all of them. And then that will help you with these MLA assignments. So the scavenger hunt, I'm going to open it up and show you all what it looks like. You guys did the MLA review previously. So this scavenger hunt is pretty straightforward. What you're doing is you are looking up various sources. So I would like you to try to find at least one of these sources using our SIC library resources. So we will go over that very shortly because our library has lots of fun resources. I say fun. It's fun for me, maybe not so much for you researching, but they are very helpful in finding sources and implementing them into your paper. So you need to find a website, online, news, or magazine article, an interview, and I will show you all how to write one of those, because this one you can make it up or it can be a published interview. If you can't find an interview, I'm going to show you a very easy way to write out the interview, and I'll be able to know which of you actually watched this video, because you'll probably choose the easy way rather than choosing the published interview, because the easy way is much easier. And then we have a print book. Even if it's been scanned online, I want you to cite a print book. It can be a novel, memoir, whatever. And then finally a peer-reviewed journal. So these are kind of the main sources or types of sources that I anticipate you will be using in your research paper. Now, you might end up using a YouTube video, which our MLA presentation shows you how to cite those. You might end up using an email or tweet or something like that, and that's fine. Purdue OWL and our insert from our Cengage handbook will show you how to cite those types of citations. But these 4 are probably the most common. So as far as an interview goes, let me just show you all how to do an interview. It's very simple. So hold on just a second. Okay, so as far as creating an interview in MLA, like if I interviewed you, for example, interviews are the easiest thing to cite in MLA. They really are. All I need to do is put the interviewee's name. So if I interviewed, let's say, Kayla Smith, I'd do that. I would type down personal interview and then the date. So if it was today, it would be 7 April 2019. That's it. That's your interview. That's all you have to put. That's it. Now, if you cite a published interview, like from Newsweek or Entertainment Weekly, then you would need to treat it like an article. Even though it's an interview, you treat it the formatting like an article. So if it was an interview written by Spacey, let's say Janet Spacey, I put Jason Momoa interviewed. And then I put Entertainment Weekly. The publisher is Entertainment Weekly is a magazine, so I would want to treat it kind of like a journal article. So I would put volume 6, issue 12. Let's say the date published was, usually magazines don't have specific days, they just have the months. And then that's pretty much it. Oot. I might put the page number at the end, so like page 14 through 26. And that's it. So if you have a published interview from a magazine, you might do something like this. Or let's say it's an online interview. So let's say that Janet Spacey does the same interview, but it's posted online. Let's say it's published on NY Times. So I have NY Times, which is by New York Times Online. And the date published for April 2019. And then my link, which is nytimes.com. Jason Momoa. Whatever. And then obviously I want to italicize my publisher there. So my web URL. So you have here just a standard personal interview. You just interview somebody you met on the street. That's what it looks like. Then you have a journal interview that's published in print and a web interview. That's how you do the interview part for the scavenger hunt. Like I said, I'm going to know which of you all watched this video and got to this part because you will know how to do it. And others will try to do something else. And I'll be like, you didn't watch the video, I can tell. So there you are. So that's how you do that assignment. But you'll need to do a website or news article, an interview. You can make it up if you can't find anything specifically, a book, and a peer-reviewed journal. So how about them library resources? So I'm going to go to sic.edu. All right. Our library resources is this link right up here. Okay. So you have lots of options. Obviously, I tell you when our library is open, but they also have lots of different databases. Now, it can get easy to get lost on here. And what our college does is they actually pay for services. Have you ever gotten online and tried to look up an article for a paper and you get to the source and they'll only let you read the first page of the source? Isn't that annoying? Yeah, that's how those different news outlets make money, is that they charge for you to read the entire article. And if you are a graduate student or a doctorate student trying to get these resources, some of you might actually pay for that. You might be thinking, well, who pays for those articles? Well, lots of students actually end up paying for it. The nice thing is that our school and many universities and other schools will pay these companies a fee to let those resources be accessed by you for free. So it's a really nice service. I highly recommend for assignments you have here at SIC, and if you transfer on to a university, take advantage of their library resources because they really are amazing. I never had to pay to get an article or anything like that because I utilized my library resources. So you might be thinking, where do I start? The easiest thing is to know what type of source you're looking for. So in my case, I'm going to be looking for an online article. So literature databases have to do with literature. So I'm going to say they'll be good for this class. Now you'll notice there are tons of different databases. So many. Where do you even start? Well, up here they have journal holdings, so SIC's journals are there. And this is important. You want to make sure that it is full text. That means they're going to let you read the entire article for free. If it is not full text, you're only going to get part of it, and what's the point in that? So I'm going to say that for our purposes, we are going to want to stick towards the arts and humanities probably, or literary criticism. Let's do literary criticism. So these are the types of databases that have literary criticisms, and you'll notice that many of them are full text. The literary index is not full text, so we're not using that. Neither is the Gale Index. We're not using that. The legal one is. Newspapers aren't. LexisNexis is. I actually like LexisNexis, so let's use that. LexisNexis has a lot of business, legal, and medical information. I like it. We're going to try it. Okay, so what you do if you are not on campus is you're going to actually put in your student ID and the last 4 of your social security number, okay? And that's how you actually get onto these sources. Now, since I'm a faculty member, I'm not sure if it's going to let me do this, but give me a second. I'm going to try and see if it's going to let me on the database. Huzzah! Let me on! So you'll just need to put in your SIC ID and the last 4 of your social security number, and then you will be able to get on when you're outside campus. So I'm at home right now, so I can get online. So LexisNexis is really cool for a lot of reasons. It has lots of different options when you search. Let's say I'm going to write my final paper about the live musicals on television. And like I said, we're going to talk about paper 4 soon, but I want to go ahead and show you how to search the library resources. So I'm going to search here. Now notice, oh no, they want me to sign in. Boo, forget that. Let me go back here and try a different one because I don't want to sign on to LexisNexis. We don't have an account with them. Let's do Arts and Humanities. Let's do, I'm going to go back to Literary Criticism. Let's do Academic Search Complete and try it instead. Okay, so I'm going to do live musicals on television. And this is EBSCOhost, if you've ever heard of it. There we go. All right. So you'll notice there's 35 articles to choose from, which is actually pretty low. Usually it'll give you like 1,000 articles. So if I wanted to narrow it down, you could go out here to the left-hand side. I can do full text, which I want. Peer-reviewed. What peer-reviewed means is that if you've ever tried to publish an article, which I've actually done this while I was in grad school, it's a big process. And what it means by peer-reviewed is that a journal article, Entertainment Weekly is a journal magazine. It's got volumes and issues, but it is not peer-reviewed. They hire people to write the articles themselves. A peer-reviewed journal is when somebody submits their article to a journal in question. That article is sent out to 2 different peer reviewers. Now, these peer reviewers do not know the writer. The writer does not know who their article is being sent to. It's completely anonymous. The peer reviewers do not know that they have that each of them have the same paper. They will read through that article and decide whether or not the article is a good fit for the journal itself. If both of them say, yeah, thumbs up, sounds good, put it in the journal, it will get published. If only one of them says go for it, it's not enough. It has to have at least both of them agreeing. So if it's all or nothing, basically. So it's extremely difficult to get published in a peer-reviewed journal because of those standards. So typically, if you cite a peer-reviewed journal, that source is considered legit and credible because it's had to go through such a strenuous process in order to get published. So I'm going to say yes, we want a scholarly peer-reviewed journal. That narrows us down to 2. Woohoo! You'll also notice it'll give you a publication date you can look through. You want obviously try to be within the last 5 years if possible to be up to date. Because of that, we're going to go with, we're just going to look at this influence article here from 2013. Okay. So the entire article is listed down below here that you can cite from. There's also a PDF version of it. You can print it out. You can save it to a folder over here on the right-hand side. You can put it on Google Drive if you have Gmail. You can email it to yourself. You can also even get the citation. I want to check and see if this is right. Okay, so they give you different formats. MLA is not the only format to cite in. So they have APA here, Chicago Manual of Style, Harvard, MLA. So we can see that we have author's last name, first name, title of article in quotation marks, the journal title is italicized, volume number, issue number, date, page number, and source. You don't have to have this PP if you don't want it. If you don't want the little page number thing there, you don't have to have it, but if you include it, that's fine. But that source is good to go. So you can actually just copy and paste it into your Works Cited page. How handy is that? Even better, right? Always double check. EBSCOhost seems to be up to date, but some of these search engines might not be, so just double check them to make sure. But yeah, it will make your works cited page construction that much easier. All right? So, and you can do the web page full text or a PDF. Even better. All right? So yeah, that's using the library resources. I ask that you please use them for at least one of the 4 sources you find for the scavenger hunt. Okay? So that is that assignment due Sunday. All right. So going back to week 13, your thesis for paper 4. We're going to talk about paper 4 guidelines. Paper 4 is my favorite paper in the class because it has so many options, it has so much creativity behind it, and it is our most challenging paper because of the length. Now, I'm going to break down this paper because when I first show you the link, they're going to be like, I can't write that. There's no way. How will I do it? There's a way. I've taught this class for over 6 years, and we've done this research paper for over 6 years, and I've had hundreds and hundreds of students complete this assignment. So I know that you can do it, and I'm going to break down how we can format the paper to get those 8 to 10 pages. You have a month. You have a month to write it, so that'll make you feel better. All right, you have over a month. It's not due till May 10th, so you all technically have over 30 days. Just pace yourself, right? Okay, so I'm going over here to the paper 4 guidelines. We are going to walk ourselves through this, and I'm going to cover everything that there is to know about paper 4. Okay, so first things first. This paper is a culmination of fiction, poetry, and drama. It is our final paper. You get to focus on whichever genre that you want. So if you want to explore more with fiction, you can. If you want to do more with poetry, you can. If you want to do more with drama, you can. If you want to do a strictly research-based project, we're going to talk about that. So step 1 is to decide which genre you really want to focus on. Now, I have had students in the past combine genres. So with Shakespeare, for example, I had a student, she did a paper comparing and contrasting Shakespeare's methodology and approach to doing poetry versus how he did fiction. And she showed how the elements were similar between the 2 genres and how they were different, which I thought was really cool. You could do something like that. You can do, there's so many ideas. The one thing that we do not want with this paper, I do not want you to recycle your paper from previous classes, particularly English 121. I've had a student before try to tell me that they wanted to do their final paper on the hazards of smoking. And my response was, what does the hazards of smoking have to do with any of our literature genres? And they were like, oh, I don't know. So we talked about it, and what they decided to do instead was to use that research from that paper from 121 and apply it in a new way. So they actually went and looked at how smoking has been embodied through cultural perceptions of film. So they started in like the 70s and 60s where characters smoked all the time. It wasn't a big deal, and had talked about how, and they used several different film examples to show how characters that smoked not only declined in films throughout the decades, but as we've learned more health information about smoking and the hazards of it, the characters that did smoke went from being just everyone to villains in stories and movies. And I thought that was pretty compelling. So they took a paper that they'd written for a previous class and they revamped it, reworked it, and added new information in to make it something better and new, which is kind of the point. I don't want your topic to be something argumentative. That's not for this class. You did it for 121. You probably will do it for other classes, but that's not 122. This needs to be something that can connect to literature in some way, shape, or form. Another student wrote a paper about animal rights and how those are portrayed in film, which I thought was interesting. And they used the idea of screenplays calling for certain things to be done and how that translated in real life. So their example was Milo and Otis, which I felt like I was being attacked because Milo and Otis is something from my childhood. Then I was like, oh, I remember that film. And this girl was like, get ready to not like it. I was like, oh. And she wrote about how there have been several animals die during the making of Milo and Otis, and connected it to animal rights regulations in film in Japan, where the movie was originally made, and how we connect it now, and animal rights advocacies, and show how it's used through film and how it's correlated in the screenplay, and it was very interesting. So it ruined Milo and Otis for me, but I will forgive that student because the paper was very, very good. So here are some options, more so than what I've just told you. You can do a research analysis on an author's fiction, poet's poetry, or playwright's screenplay's history and how their style and craft has changed over time. The most popular example in the last 2 years has been Stephen King. And I'm going to kind of say, please, maybe get away from Stephen King and Nicholas Sparks, because I've read about 10 papers on them. But what they did was they talked about the author's upbringing, how their style of writing originally started, the events that have changed their style, and how it's developed over time. So it's kind of like a biography that's being written. And I'm okay with that. It makes for a good research paper. There's lots of materials usually for authors out there, so it ends up working pretty well. That's option number one you can do. A controversy within a genre. This one's probably my favorite out of all the options. I had a student a few years ago write an amazing paper about Harper Lee, who wrote To Kill a Mockingbird, which you've probably read in high school or in college. And in her elder years, a few years ago, publishers came across a manuscript that she had hidden for decades. And it was for a sequel to Kill a Mockingbird, the book Go Set a Watchman. And it was a big controversy at the time because the publishers were really wanting Harper Lee to release this novel. They're like, oh, it's a sequel to Kill a Mockingbird. That's a classic novel in American canon. You need to release the sequel. Readers will want to know what happened. And a lot of literary critics were actually very much against this because they said, well, for one, Harper Lee wrote this, decades ago. Why didn't she release it back then unless she felt like it wasn't going to be a good sequel and it shouldn't be released? The other thing was Harper Lee was very elderly. She was suffering from dementia-like symptoms, and a lot of people said these publishers were basically exploiting her and taking advantage of her declining mental state and agreeing to release the novel so that they could profit from it. Long story short, she did end up releasing the sequel, and they ended up profiting from it, and she passed away a few years ago. I will not read To Go Set a Watchman because of this student's paper. The student went into such detail about the exploitation and all of the little things they were trying to do to get her to publish this novel. I've basically boycotted it, and not only that, I've heard it's terrible and will ruin To Kill a Mockingbird for you, so sold, not reading it. But that student's paper was very impactful for me and was powerful. And so if you can find a controversy within a genre of literature, whether it's poetry, drama, or fiction, I say go for it. Research it, write about it. It's interesting. The Rocky Horror remake was a little bit more on the fluffy side. It wasn't quite as serious as Harper Lee being exploited, but it was still something that students have wrote about in the past that was pretty interesting. I know a lot of people have voiced, Disney's remakes. Are those worth it? What does it mean for our film industry? What does it mean for literature and creativity? That might be something you want to explore. So as you can see, as I'm going over these options, you're pretty much limitless as to what you can pick as long as it has something related to these lovely genres right here. Okay? A research analysis, you could take a piece of drama or fiction and talk about its adaptation and how that makes the source material better or worse. I had a student write about analyses of Batman versus Superman. Keynote about this example, though, and I'll go back to our fiction paper. This should not be a book report of just how they are similar and different. I don't want that. I don't want you to just be like, in the Hunger Games book, Katniss did this, but in the film, she did this. That's not what I want. I want you to break down what changes from the genre of text to another genre like film or animation or audiobooks, something like that. I want to know what changes element-wise within those things. So the Batman vs. Superman, the student, he actually went back and looked at the source material, which are the comics, and he showed how the comics were based off other materials, how they led into these storylines, and then showed how Batman vs. Superman was derivative of that, but also changed so much, and the audience's reactions to that, people's reactions to Zack Snyder, how it affected Justice League later on. You know, he kind of connected to these other things and wasn't just giving me a plot beat for beat example of how they're similar and different. So, I mean, you got to think outside the box for this option, but it can be really fun to put together if you do. All right. And then, if you want to do an extended analysis of a specific poem, piece of fiction, or play, you can. It cannot be the subject of a previous paper. So if you wrote about Nicholas Sparks's The Notebook for paper 1, you can do another analysis of another Nicholas Sparks book, but it just can't be The Notebook. So it can't be repeating what you've already done in the class. If you have any out-of-the-box ideas, especially involving creative writing, you are more than welcome to ask me about that. I have had some students do some really cool creative writing pieces before. They will involve some out-of-the-box compromises, though. So, for example, when we talk about sources and citations, if you do a creative writing piece, you might be thinking, oh, well, I'm just writing my own story. I don't have to cite anything. You will. You'll have to do a supplemental citation where you find just some random sources to cite so that it can show that you understand citation and that part of the assignment. So again, if you want to do something creative writing themed, I am not opposed to it. I'm all for people doing out-of-the-box ideas. I just want to make sure that you are putting in as much effort and work as the person doing one of these other options. So there's no shortcuts, no cutting corners on this final paper. I want to make sure we all put in the same amount of work and effort to get the same grade. Okay? So I hope that this helped you make your mind run wild with ideas, and at least you can kind of sit and stew and think about it. But I do want to go over the other guidelines too about this final paper before closing the video. No matter what topic or prompt you choose, your research essay must be at least 8 pages, double-spaced, 12-point font, and have the following. And this is where we break it down, and I'll show you how 8 pages seems insane, but it is doable. You have to have an introduction paragraph where you explain your thesis or the goal of the paper as well as the points you're planning to address. So basically you introduce your idea, introduce what your paper is going to be about, what you're going to talk about, things like that. You need a section after your introduction where you explain the controversy, the idea, the process, offer some background information. So it's kind of like an extended introduction where you talk a little bit more about the topic before you dive into the points of the paper. You need to at least address 3 concepts or terms from the genres that you select. So if you select prose, we need 3 prose terminologies. They can be elements of prose, they can be bolded terms from our unit, at least 3. Poetry needs to be 3 poetry terms, drama needs to be 3. Now, you don't have to bold them, you don't have to draw them out or draw attention to them in your paper, but I will be looking to see that you address them. If I don't see you talking about any of the elements or terminology from our book, I will dock you points on that. And then, of course, in the last couple of papers, we've not had any strict numbers for sources. This one has a set number. 4. 4 sources you have to cite in this paper. Wikipedia, wikis, and about.com or about articles do not count. And I will call you out if I see them. Because I'm like, we've had the MLA presentation, we've gone over this, no WikiHows, no Wikipedia articles, none of that count as sources. They need to be 4 legit, credible sources. And if you're curious about what will count as a credible or legit source, go back to that MLA citation presentation. Go back to that video. I talk all about it. I ramble on for ages about that specifically because it does matter that you are being credible. Because if you're not credible as a writer, then what you write will not matter because your audience won't care. And I want your audience to care because they are going to read your paper, and we're going to talk about that next. Your paper should be an analysis. It's not just a summary, not a book report. If you're doing an out-of-the-box assignment, you can talk with me, but this is your chance to really get creative and expressive with your work. You do need an MLA Works Cited page and in-text citations. If you're doing the creative writing option, we'll talk about what you need to do to incorporate these supplementally. But in terms of due dates, the topic and thesis is due this Sunday, April 14th. The outline is due the next weekend. The peer review rough draft. So this last paper, I know several of you have been like, man, I wish that my fellow students could have read my paper because I worked so hard on it. Well, since you're working extra hard on this paper, we do as a class get to read your draft, which I'm excited about. I love the peer review forum because it is our chance as a class to see not only your work, you get to show it off, but it also will give you more opportunities to have your work peer reviewed and proofread before you turn in the final draft. This is our only paper in the class you do not get to revise because it is due by the last day of class. Please note, this is a Friday, not Saturday or Sunday. Our class ends for good on May 10th, meaning it is the last day of all. Everything is due May 10th, including your final paper. If you turn it in after 11:55 p.m. on May 10th, I won't take it. I won't count it. You will get a 0 on it. So please, I beg of you, last semester was the first semester everyone turned their paper in on time, and I was so thrilled. Before last semester, I always had one person that would forget to turn it in, and they'd message me on Saturday or Sunday and be like, hey, can I submit it? And I'm like, no, because I have to get grades in by Monday. So that means I have to all of your stuff graded over the weekend. And unfortunately, once our class ends, it's over. I can't take any late work. So please make sure you get everything submitted by Friday. But your rough draft will be due by Friday, May 3rd. Now, by rough draft, you may be asking, how long is that rough draft? Because is it going to be 8 pages? And this is also how I know you will watch the video, because here's where I say it. Your rough draft needs to be at least 4 pages for the peer review. And I will say this. It needs to be at least 4 or more pages, but I would get it as close to 8 pages as possible, and here's why. Because if you just turn in 4 pages for your peer review rough draft, that's great. I will give a strong look over those first 4 pages, but the other 4 pages are on you. I'm not going to look at them before it's time to turn it in. If you try, I've had students that will submit like a 2-page draft to the discussion forum, and then on Monday, May 6th, they'll be like, hey, here's my draft, and it's got 8 pages now. Will you look over it? Nope. It's got to be turned in at the peer review forum for me to look at it, because that's the assignment. So just make sure you turn it in as much as you can get, at least 4 pages. If you can get close to 8, that's just more for me to look at. If it's less than 4 pages, I will take points off of the assignment, and that's all you'll get me to look at. And I want to be able to look at as much paper as I can, so I can give you as much feedback as possible, so you get the best grade possible on the paper. Okay? So you'll look at least to 2 of your peers' papers and review, and then then you'll just have the rest of that week to revise, to make changes, to make additions, whatever you need to do, and then the paper is due by May 10th. But you can always turn it in early if you want. As far as the grading goes, since this paper is twice the amount of text, it's worth twice the amount of points. Your introduction and conclusion are each worth 10 points for a 20-point total. The page length and formatting is worth 20 points total. Spelling and grammar, I give a big chunk to this paper since it is so long. The works cited, you will notice that this is the first time the works cited is built into the assignment itself, and it is worth a good 40 points. So please make sure you include your works cited citation page and in-text citations. And then your actual content is worth 60 points. So it all kind of breaks up and balances out pretty well. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, how do I break down an 8-page paper? You might be surprised. So I'm going to stay logged in here. So hold on just a second. Yeah, so if I'm breaking down, and I will go back to this particular document when we go over the outline next week, but if you think of it this way, you have 8 or more pages. You can go over 8. I had a student one semester, I'll never forget it. She was probably in her 40s, and she told me that she loved Les Mis. And she wanted to do an extended analysis about Les Mis, which is Les Miserables. It's a play about the French Revolution. And she told me she wanted to talk about the original novel, how it became the original play, how it's been adapted, and then later this was around the time that the movie adaptation of Les Mis came out, the one with Hugh Jackman. I think it was 2012, somewhere around there. But she wanted to write a paper about it, and I said, sure. So at the peer review, she had a 10-page draft. And I was like, whoa, this is really cool. But it only got to the part about the novel adaptation and the novel being into the original play. I was like, you have so much information here. And she's like, oh yeah, I've just got a little bit more. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the stage show and then into the movie and all of that. Her paper ended up being 32 pages long. Yes, 32 pages. It took me a whole day to grade it. It was great. It was insanity in how detailed it was. She still ended up making a high B on it because she had a lot of repetitive grammar errors. And I was like, oh no. And those repetitive grammar errors, because we only saw the first 10 pages, we didn't see the other 22 pages, that caused her to get like an 89 on it. But I was like, oh my gosh, there's so much here. So yes, you can go beyond 8 pages. If you get to the 20-page mark, you might consider wrapping up. Because at that point, you might consider publishing this paper with how much time you spent on it. I guess she had nothing else to do with my class and just wanted to focus on it. But anyway, so you have 8 or more pages. Let's just say we have an 8-page paper. All right, so page 1 should be your introduction and the description or history paragraph that comes after it. Okay, so that's page 1. Page 2 through 7 should be an analysis, talking about terminology, research. Oh my gosh. Research, opinions about topic, reactions from audience. I mean, your analysis could easily take up, you could do pages 2 through 5 on terminology of the genre. You could do pages 6 and 7 about audience reception and adaptation or biographical information. And then page 8 can be your summary and lead into conclusion. So it's totally doable. It's very possible. And obviously, we'll talk about the outlines next week, but your outline can drastically vary depending on what topic you have. But please rest assured that I do believe you can get 8 pages out of this paper. If it makes you feel any better, my master's thesis was 107 pages, and I wrote it in 3 months. So see, that's like 30 pages a month. You've got a month to write 8. Obviously, you're not all English majors because you're like, yeah, I don't intend to write a thesis like that. But my point is that I have faith that you can do this. Some students get scared when they see an 8-page paper and they're like, there's no way. There is. And I have students do it every semester, and I have faith in you. And there's a way to organize it, and the reason why I have your thesis due this week, your outline due next week, and I have all these little bits and pieces along the way is to help you not procrastinate. Because I've had those students that didn't do the thesis, the outline, or the peer review forum, and then are struggling the week of finals to write an 8-page paper because they didn't know where to start. My goal is that the thesis by this weekend, you at least have an idea of what you want to do, and that can change along the way. If it changes drastically, please let me know because I want to make sure your topic will work. But your outline is to get a framework, much like we've done with our last few papers, to give you a starting point. The draft is that draft, doing that is to keep you from having the 2 a.m., oh gosh, I've got to write this 8-page paper. Your draft will at least get some of it done for you. And then you'll have that last week to revise, to add, to change, to get it ready. Okay? So that's my goal behind all of this, is to do that. And hopefully that works. But yeah, this is the paper I get most excited about. I love this final paper. It's your chance to be most creative, to get expressive out of the box. This is probably the last English class you will ever have in college. Ever. And I want your class to go out with a bang. So I want it to end on a high note with something cool that you'll be proud of later on. I still have my capstone paper for my senior year of college because it was the last English paper I wrote as an undergrad. I was proud of it. I thought it was awesome. I was really happy with how it turned out. I want you to have that same feeling when you get done with this paper. It's something you can hold on to and be like, look what I did, and have that paper. Okay? So, yes, the only other thing to talk about this week is that if you decide to revise paper 2, revisions are due by this coming Sunday. If you made an A on it, you're probably fine. If you made a B and you want to revise grammar, go for it. If you made a C or below, please consider revising. You guys know the norm. We're almost to the end of the semester. But yeah, that's basically this week. This week should mainly be about thinking about paper 4, what you want to do, and then obviously the MLA scavenger hunt and your discussion forum. All right. If you all have any questions as you think about your paper topic, because this paper tends to get students kind of like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And writing down lists and thinking of ideas. If you ever want to run any idea by me before you turn in the thesis statement, just send me an email. I'm totally cool with that. I'll give you a reply back saying, yeah, that would work, or maybe you should tweak it this way, or no, think of something else. I'll be really honest with you because I want you to pick a topic that's going to work and give you enough information to create an 8-page paper. I've had some students in the past choose a very specific idea and then it not have enough info for them to make that 8 pages. So I definitely want to help you with that. But I will stop rambling now because I've gone on for about 40 minutes. And if you have any questions at all, just let me know. But otherwise, I'm excited for this final paper. We're entering the home stretch, and I'm so excited to see how these develop in the coming weeks. Have an awesome week, and if you have any questions, let me know. Talk to you later, guys.